My wife and I worked for years to build our $900, $0 dream home, only to find she secretly transferred half to her brother during a fake divorce while she's now claiming I was controlling. Now we're battling over $500, $0 in property, and I just discovered she's been secretly laundering money for him. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy writing this kind of story, but here I am. The thing is, I found out my wife has been cheating on me for months, probably longer, and it hit me like a freight train. The surprising part, it wasn't just the affair. It was everything else that came with it. The lies, the manipulation, the way she's been secretly screwing over everyone, including me. It all started with little things, signs I ignored at first because I didn't want to believe the worst. But then, the pieces started falling into place, and I realized I was living in some kind of twisted nightmare. We built what we thought was our dream home over the course of years. I worked my ass off, sweating through long hours at my job, saving every penny. Was right there with me, or so I thought. We poured hundreds of thousands into that house, 900 in total, and it was supposed to be our sanctuary. But behind my back, she was playing her own game. I found out she transferred half of the equity to her brother, Jason, during a fake divorce she filed without telling me. She claimed she was protecting her assets, that I was controlling and paranoid. Yeah, right. She painted herself as the victim while secretly funneling money into her brother's pocket. The moment I uncovered that she'd transferred half of our property to Jason, I knew something was seriously wrong. I had no idea she was capable of that kind of betrayal. She'd always been manipulative, but this was next level. I'd been suspicious for a while, strange texts, late nights, her phone buzzing nonstop, but I didn't want to believe she was cheating. I kept telling myself it was just work stress or some kind of misunderstanding. But then I started digging, and everything unraveled faster than I could keep up. It was late one night and I was going through our bank statements, trying to get a handle on our finances because the divorce thing was getting messy. That's when I saw the transfer, half of our property gone. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I called her immediately and she tried to brush it off, said it was a business deal, that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I'd seen her secret texts, her coded messages with Jason, and I had a gut feeling she'd been lying to me all along. Then I found the emails, proof she'd been laundering money for her brother, hiding it under fake accounts, moving cash around like some criminal mastermind. I was stunned. How could she do this to me, to us? Of course, she everything at first. Said I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, that I was controlling. She threw out every excuse in the book, saying I was jealous, insecure, or just imagining things. But I had the receipts now. Her lies crumbled under the weight of real evidence. It was like watching the woman I loved turn into a total stranger right in front of me. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing I'd been played for a fool all these years. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I married, was secretly screwing over her own family, her own husband, and probably everyone else around her. That's when I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't just sit back and pretend none of this was happening. I had to face her, face the truth, and figure out what the hell I was going to do next. I was angry, hurt, confused all at once. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The trust I'd had in her, in our life, was shattered. And yet part of me was still in disbelief that someone I'd shared everything with could be capable of such deception. I never thought I'd be the guy who caught his wife cheating and laundering money, but here I am, trying to piece together how my whole world fell apart. The confrontation didn't happen right away. Honestly, I needed time to process everything I'd uncovered before I even had the courage to face her directly. The first time I saw her after I found out about the money transfer and the laundering was in the kitchen, and she was acting like everything was normal. She was bitchy, snapping at me over small things like I was the one causing all the trouble. She threw her usual lies out there. You're just paranoid. You don't trust me. You're controlling. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I looked her in the eyes and saw the flicker of guilt, the flicker of someone who knew she'd been caught. That night I sat her down and I asked her point blank about the transfer, about the money laundering. Her face went pale for a second, then she started with her usual bullshit. She told me she was doing it for the family, that Jason needed the money to fund some business venture, that I was just jealous and insecure. She claimed she'd never cheat on me, that she loved me, and that I was just overreacting because I didn't understand how complicated money was. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But the evidence was in my face. The emails, the bank statements, the transfer records, they all proved she'd been lying the entire time. When I pressed her further, she lost her temper. She yelled at me, called me controlling, said I was ruining everything because I didn't trust her. She accused me of being a bad husband, of trying to keep her under lock and key. That's when I saw the true nature of her bitchiness, how she could turn everything around and make me feel like I was the one at fault. I'd been blinded by love, but now I saw her for what she really was: manipulative, selfish, and willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what she wanted. I could see her sneaking around, texting Jason late at night, hiding money, and making up stories to cover her tracks. The emotional toll hit hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut over and over again. The woman I'd trusted with my life was secretly screwing over me, her own family, and probably anyone who got in her way. That betrayal cut deeper than I can explain. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the fact that I'd been living a lie, and I'd been so blind I'd see it. I started to question everything: our relationship, my judgment, my own worth. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see the signs? She was good at hiding her tracks, convincing everyone she was the victim, and I was just some paranoid control freak. The worst part, she kept lying even as I laid out the evidence. She laundering money, any affair, and insisted she was the victim of my controlling ways. She spun stories about how I was trying to keep her from her family, how I didn't trust her because I was insecure. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her true face and realized that her bitchiness wasn't just a personality flaw. It was a mask she wore to hide her real motives. I felt betrayed, furious, and heartbroken all at once. I had loved her, I thought, but now I saw that love was just a lie I'd told myself to keep going. I spent days just walking around in a daze, trying to figure out what to do. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after everything, but the anger was overwhelming. I wanted to confront her again, to make her see I wasn't going to be played anymore. I wanted her to realize that I knew the truth, that I'd been betrayed on every level. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I kept replaying her lies, her sneers, the way she'd tried to manipulate me into thinking I was overreacting. But I also knew I had to be smart about this. I couldn't just blow up and make things worse. I needed a plan. So I started gathering more evidence, talking to a lawyer, figuring out my options. I knew the money she transferred was just the tip of the iceberg. The laundering, the fake divorce, her secret affairs. I was uncovering a web of lies I didn't think possible. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, legal, and personal. I was angry at myself for trusting her so blindly, but I also realized I needed to protect myself and my assets. I had poured everything into that house, into our life, and now it was all at risk. I didn't sleep much those nights. My mind kept racing, replaying everything she'd said and done. I felt like I was living in some twisted soap opera. I knew I had to confront her again, this time with a plan, with evidence, and I needed to be ready for whatever she threw at me. I kept thinking about the house, the money, and the fact that she'd been lying right to my face for so long. I could feel the rage bubbling beneath the surface, but I also knew I had to stay calm. The truth was out now, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of it this time. After hours of sleepless nights filled with anger, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal, I finally decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I needed to take control of the situation, to confront her with everything I'd uncovered and see how she'd react when cornered. The day I chose to do it, she was acting even more bitchy than usual, snapping at me over nothing, throwing her weight around like she owned the place. She was trying to act like she was the victim, like I was the one overreacting, but I had enough. I had all the evidence and I was ready to lay it all out. That evening, I sat her down in the living room, the atmosphere thick with tension. I told her I knew about the transfer, about the laundering, about her lies. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she immediately started with her usual manipulation tactics. "You're just jealous," she spat. "You don't trust me because you're insecure. You're controlling, and that's why you're accusing me of all this." She crossed her arms, trying to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong, but I wasn't backing down. I pulled out the printouts, the emails, the bank statements, everything I'd been collecting. Her reaction was priceless. She went from defiant to angry to outright dismissive in seconds. "That's all fake," she yelled. "You're just trying to ruin me because you're insecure about losing control." She started crying, fake tears that didn't reach her bitchy eyes, and claimed she'd never cheat or launder money. She said she was just trying to help her brother, that he was in trouble, that I didn't understand how money worked. But I knew better. I saw her sneaking around with her phone, her secret texts, and I knew she'd been lying about everything. She was trying to spin it like I was the bad guy, but I saw through her. The emotional impact was overwhelming. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest again and again. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was just a con artist hiding behind a pretty face. How could I have been so blind? I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, my money, and she'd used it to manipulate and betray me. The worst part was seeing her try to gaslight me, to make me doubt what I knew was true. She kept insisting I was paranoid, that I was making everything up, trying to make me feel crazy. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. As she continued to lie and deny, I realized I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay with someone who was so manipulative and deceitful. I told her I was done with her lies, her manipulation, her betrayal. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to protect my assets, and that I wasn't going to let her ruin me. Her face twisted into a sneer again, and she spat. "You're just jealous I'm smarter than you," before storming off to her bedroom. I sat there, staring at the evidence I'd laid out, feeling a strange mixture of relief and deep sadness. I'd lost my wife, but at least now I knew the truth. In the days that followed, I started taking serious legal steps. I hired a lawyer, began the process of disentangling our finances, and made sure I had all the legal documents I needed to protect what was mine. The house, the money, all of it. She tried to screw me over, but I was determined not to let her. I also started to realize how much her manipulative attitude had affected me. I'd been so blind, so trusting, that I'd ignored all the warning signs. Now I was finally seeing her for what she truly was: a liar, a thief, and a manipulative bitch who'd been cheating on me, laundering money for her brother, and trying to control everything. The emotional toll was staggering. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I saw her for what she was, and I knew I had to move on. I couldn't let her destroy what I'd worked so hard for. I realized that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild, especially when it's been shattered by such lies and deception. I promised myself I'd get through this, that I'd rebuild my life, and that I'd never let someone like her manipulate me again. The pain was real, but so was my resolve. I knew I had to cut her out, even if it meant starting over from scratch. The days after I confronted felt like walking through a fog. I was numb, angry, and trying to process the fact that the woman I'd loved and trusted had been secretly screwing me over all along. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sneering face, the texts with Jason, the transfer records. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But I knew I had to act fast to protect myself and the little that was left of my sanity. I started by gathering more evidence, making sure I had everything documented. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in financial crimes and divorce. I wanted to be prepared for whatever legal battle was coming, because I knew she'd fight dirty. I also reached out to a financial advisor to get a clear picture of what was left of our assets. The house, the savings, the investments, all of it had been tainted by her lies. I found out that she'd been laundering money through fake accounts, funneling cash into her brother's business, and hiding assets from me. The more I dug, the more I realized how deeply she'd betrayed me. Meanwhile's attitude didn't change much. She continued to act bitchy, throwing tantrums whenever I brought up the divorce or the evidence I had. She accused me of trying to ruin her, call me insecure, say I was just jealous of her success. She insisted she was the victim, that I was controlling and paranoid. But I saw through her lies now. I knew she was just trying to save her own ass, to spin her way out of trouble. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. She'd been lying to me for years, and I'd been too stupid or too trusting to see it. One day I caught her in a major lie. She was on her phone texting someone late at night. I snuck a peek and saw she was talking to Jason, discussing how to hide more money, how to cover her tracks. That was the final straw. I realized she'd been planning her escape for months, probably even before I found out about the transfer. She was orchestrating her own version of a getaway, and I was just a pawn in her game. The anger surged through me again, but this time it was mixed with a sense of resolve. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I sat her down again, this time with a lawyer present. I wanted her to see I was serious. I told her I knew about everything, her cheating, laundering, her lies, and that I was filing for divorce and taking legal action to protect my assets. She scoffed at me, acting like she was the victim, claiming I was trying to control her. She said she'd never cheat, never launder money, and that I was just paranoid. But I had the evidence, and I had the law on my side. I saw her face go pale, and for the first time I saw the panic behind her bitchy facade. She knew she was cornered. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, furious, and drained. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally seeing her for what she truly was, a manipulative, deceitful woman who'd used me, lied to me, and tried to screw me over. I realized I'd wasted so much time trusting her, believing in the fairy tale we'd built. Now I was faced with a choice: fight for my money, my house, my dignity, or let her keep manipulating me. I chose to fight. I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my life from her toxic grasp. I started the legal process, filing the divorce papers and demanding an audit of all our accounts. I wanted to make sure she didn't hide anything else. I also contacted the bank and the authorities to report the money laundering. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, so I had to move quickly. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, bitchy, manipulative, trying to scare me into backing down. But I wasn't going to let her win. I was done playing her game. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I was determined to come out of this stronger with what was rightfully mine. I'd learned a hard lesson about trust, about deception, and about the dangerous power of someone willing to lie and cheat their way through life. But I was ready to rebuild, one step at a time. The legal battle dragged on, and every day felt like a new assault on my patience and sanity. Kept up her bitchy attitude, throwing tantrums, trying to manipulate the process, and insisting she was the victim. She'd cry, yell, and accuse me of trying to ruin her life, her usual tactic to turn everything around and make me feel guilty. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I had the evidence, I had the law on my side, and I knew that I had to stay strong for myself. One afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. The investigation into the money laundering was advancing faster than I expected. Turns out had been funneling money through multiple fake accounts, some in her brother's name, some in shell companies she set up herself. The amount she transferred, half of our house's value, was just the tip of the iceberg. The authorities were closing in, and I could see the final pieces falling into place. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger, relief that justice might be served, and anger that I'd been played so badly. Meanwhile's attitude didn't change much. She continued her manipulative ways, trying to guilt me into dropping the case. She'd say things like, "You're ruining our family, and I did all this for us." Even though her actions painted a different picture, I knew her game now. She wanted to scare me, to make me back off. But I was done being manipulated. I'd seen her true face, and I was ready to fight to the end. One night I caught her sneaking around again, texting Jason about hiding more money. I decided I'd had enough. I sat her down with a cold, hard look and told her I was done playing her game. I told her I knew about everything, her affair, her money laundering, her lies, and that I was going to take everything from her that she'd tried to steal. I told her I was going to get a court order to freeze all her accounts, expose her in front of everyone, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. Her bitchy attitude turned to panic and she started yelling, calling me crazy, jealous, and paranoid. But I knew the truth now and I wasn't backing down. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally seeing her for what she truly was, a manipulative, deceitful woman who'd used me, lied to me, and tried to screw me over. I realized I'd wasted so much time trusting her, believing in the fairy tale we'd built. Now I was faced with a choice: fight for my money, my house, my dignity, or let her keep manipulating me. I chose to fight. I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my life from her toxic grasp. The day of the court hearing finally arrived. Showed up, bitchy as ever, trying to sway the judge with her tears and sob stories. But I had the evidence, the legal documentation, and the support of my lawyer. I presented everything: the transfer records, the laundering evidence, her secret texts, and explained how she betrayed me on every level. The judge listened carefully, and I could see her eyes narrowing as she took it all in. By the end of the hearing, the court ordered an immediate freeze on all her assets, including the house, and appointed a receiver to oversee her finances. The look on his face was priceless. She realized her game was over. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd fought hard for what was rightfully mine, and I'd won. But the damage was done. I'd lost my wife, someone I'd loved and trusted blindly, and I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible. Still, I knew I had to move forward. I had to rebuild my life piece by piece and learn from this nightmare. The betrayal taught me that not everyone who appears to be your partner truly is. Trust is fragile, and some people will go to any lengths to manipulate and deceive. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'll never let someone like get that close again. I'll be more cautious, more guarded, and most importantly, I'll never ignore the warning signs again. Looking back now, I realize how much I've been through and how it's changed me. The betrayal cut deep, but it also forced me to face truths I'd been avoiding, about trust, about greed, and about the lengths people will go to when they're desperate or selfish. I spent years building a life with, thinking I was doing everything right, only to find out she was secretly tearing it all apart behind my back. The money, the house, the false promises, everything was a lie. And yet somehow I came out of it stronger, not unscathed, but wiser. The legal battle finally settled, and I managed to get most of what was rightfully mine back, what she tried to steal through her lies and laundering. It wasn't just about the money, though. It was about reclaiming my dignity and my sense of security. I learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild, so I don't take it lightly anymore. I've become more cautious, more aware of the red flags I once ignored. The experience has made me realize that sometimes love isn't enough. People can be very good at hiding who they truly are until it's too late. I've also come to understand that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about protecting yourself and making sure justice is served. Thought she could manipulate her way out of everything, but she underestimated the power of truth and the law. I don't regret what I did. I only regret not seeing her for what she was sooner. Now, I focus on rebuilding my life, one step at a time, with a clear mind and a cautious heart. I still feel the sting of betrayal, but I also feel a sense of freedom. I'm no longer blind to the reality around me, and I refuse to let anyone manipulate or control me again. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs of betrayal, no matter how uncomfortable they make you feel. Be vigilant about your finances, your relationships, and your own well-being. People can surprise you in the worst ways, and if you don't stand up for yourself, they'll keep taking advantage. But remember, you're stronger than you think. Facing the truth is hard, but it's necessary if you want to move forward. You can survive this, rebuild, and come out better on the other side. I have, and I'm finally starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I'll be okay again.